Hello folks, just to let you know, we also create strategic websites for clients worldwide. So if you or anyone you know needs a new or redesigned website, please visit us at creativethunder.co and get in touch. By doing so, you'll help us to continue to develop more videos like the one you're about to watch. Hello again, folks. It is still Wednesday, the 16th of December, 2015, and we're at a small lake called Lac du Paladru in the Rhône-Alpes in France, and we're just, sort of beyond words at this point. How incredibly dimmed everything is all the time. Everywhere we go, everything is just so dimmed. How are people not noticing how unbelievably dim and how lifeless everywhere is? We are constantly seeing villages that, just more generally places, villages, towns, cities, natural places, houses, architecture that I would typically find really inspiring, really uplifting, but in the context of everything being so dimmed, it's like everything is, and I know that there's been scientific research and evidence of the severe global dimming, but it's like everything is like 90% dimmed. There's enough light to where one knows that it's daytime, and enough light to where one can see the platinum white glow of the sun that I'll just show you. But apart from that, everything is so dimmed. There's this pall cast over the entire earth, and everywhere we go. I first really felt this in living in Tuscany in the spring of 2014, and then later that year when we were spent the late summer, autumn, and winter in Greece. And, living on a Greek island and in two amazing houses, you would have thought it would have been just paradise. And it in fact was, except again, just like this, everything was dimmed. There was a lifelessness, just as there exists a lifelessness every place that we go to, no matter how beautiful, no matter what an incredibly gorgeous village we stumble upon and walk around, or a nice town or a nice natural spot like this. But everything is just so dimmed. The world just seems lifeless. And you can feel it in towns and in villages and in cafes where people are sitting outside. First of all, hardly anybody sits outside anymore. In the world that I inhabited back in like the 70s and the 80s, where to go out to a restaurant, to a cafe, and to sit outside, is just one of the most, energizing, inspiring things for me to do. And it's not that anymore anywhere. People, to some extent, are still going through the motions of doing what people used to do, but the life is gone. It always reminds me of that Christmas special. I think it's Santa Claus is Coming to Town. We're in the first part of the show. The children are all really down and depressed, and everything's sort of painted in somber grays. There's no color. There's no life in the world, and it's not until later that old Saint Nick shows up and things start brightening up, and he says, what's wrong here? And the toys have been taken from the children because of the sort of cartoon-like police state that was being enforced by the Burgermeister, Meisterburger, the character. But that's exactly how the world feels to me now. Everything is just behind a pall of lifelessness. You can see how small this lake is. It's tiny. And yet, just the other side, look at how whited out. Look at how whited out the other side of it is. And even across the short distance, how whited out that is. But just the skies are white, lifeless. You talk to people, and there's this incredible lifelessness, this incredible pall that has been cast upon the earth. And it's no wonder that so many people are taking antidepressants. Fortunately, neither Mufida nor I suffer from depression. I think it's because we are quite good at finding meaning through doing what it is we do. Whether it's making my videos, resisting the Zionist New World Order in whatever way we are able to do so, whether it's through writing, blog posts, making videos, putting things out onto social media, plus our travels and our day-to-day work with our businesses. So we're pretty good at sort of energizing ourselves and finding a reason to continue on. But you can see why so many people must be suffering so horrendously from depression. Why people are taking solace in drugs and alcohol and prescription drugs that the doctors are in the business of dispensing, just like your local drug addict or drug provider. And because what is there for people to be excited about? Everything is just this pall. There's no light, there's no life. It's extraordinary. And it wouldn't be quite so extraordinary if people were talking about it and saying, okay, what are we going to do about this? How do we take back our worlds? If that were happening, it could be an opportunity for incredible sort of reconnecting with our fellow human beings. That in and of itself would give life meaning. And that's a large part of why I do what I do, because as I've said in other videos and in other places, life to me, once the jackboot of the Zionist New World Order has clamped down totally, such that we cannot talk to anyone, such that we cannot share information with anybody through any means, life will be utterly devoid of meaning to me under the jackboot of the Zionist New World Order. So that's why it's so incredibly important for me to do what I do to try to raise awareness. And that's all it really takes, folks. Remember, and as I've said in my tweet stream just today and countless other times in various other media, the psychopaths, the Zionists at the helm, those who use pedophilia to compromise and thereby control the puppet politicians that we think are our elected leaders of our ostensible nation states, but which are in fact just puppet politicians who have been placed in power by the Zionist New World Order. Just listening to the sounds, actually, of all these ducks. They're all hanging out here. It's quite funny. This is the kind of thing that I actually, derive pleasure from. And look at these ducks and coots. More hens just floating around. It's quite funny. And I feel bad for nature as well. I look at the cows in the fields and the livestock and these birds and things, just think, they're inhabiting a world that they shouldn't be inhabiting. This is not the natural order that they should be living within. If you look at those clouds just below the sun, you can see the Doppler or Nexrad electromagnetic pulses pulsing through those ostensible clouds, but which are not clouds. And you can see the same thing. I don't know if there's enough light, but you can see it across the way and also over here. Wherever you see those lines, that's the electromagnetic pulses being pulsed through the sky, through the atmosphere, and they use that to disperse the aerosols that have been sprayed out of the airplanes to make it spread. But it also, as the Soviet Union identified when they realized that the West was doing this, it also has a clear impact on people's mental well-being. And so they were really concerned about that. I'll leave a link in the video description below. I've left it below another video in the past, so I'll just get that and copy it into this video as well, but for you to take a look at. But look at how somber, look at how lifeless everything is. You know, we go into these beautiful villages and things, and we walk around and there's just no life. You know, even upscale, affluent villages, you know, where there should be like some sort of cafe society happening, some people sitting outside of bars, you know, the sort of thing that people used to love to come to Europe and to be part of, or just to sit and watch and have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, or a glass of beer, and to watch people. But there's so little of that. So I'm certain that it's had a massive impact on the economic well-being of all of these countries as well. You know, when I think back to living in the northeast of the United States when I was a kid, as well as later on when I was in my 30s, and also living in northeast Texas when I was in my teens and 20s and early 30s, you know, going out to a restaurant, sitting outside and having Mexican food on a beautiful, in Dallas, you know, a beautiful mid-February winter's day, where we'd often get these beautiful, glorious blue sky days that would be, you know, 75, 80, 85 degrees, just come up out of nowhere in the middle of winter. That used to be so inspiring, that sort of thing. But I know from looking at videos and photographs of even the Dallas-Fort Worth area where I used to live, what we're seeing here is what they are seeing. Yeah, it's all relative, but we're all under these leaden, somber skies. You can't look anywhere without seeing airplanes flying overhead, spraying yet more aerosols into an already aerosol-drenched sky. You know, when we came out here, there were planes crisscrossing all over the place. You can still see the effect, of course, of them. The sky is just so chock-a-block with white. It's like, why are they even bothering anymore? But yet, they're always still flying. And everything is just so lifeless. There's no light. You know, I said in one of my videos about a month ago when we were living just outside of Uzès, it's where the artist Van Gogh lived, in Arles and just that area. And the reason he went there is because of the quality of light was incredible, the colors, and he let those colors come through in his art. He was really inspired by it. But again, that doesn't exist anymore. You know, the tourists still go and they look at the places where Van Gogh would go to, where he was hospitalized and so on and so forth. But it's an empty experience. The underlying phenomenon doesn't exist anymore. Just as the quality of light in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I went to do my second master's degree, and lived up in the mountains for a year just above Santa Fe. The quality of light used to bring people from all over. Lots of artists would come. It had a special quality where everything could be seen so clearly. But again, nowadays, the skies over New Mexico are like this. Everything is somber, gray, leaden, lifeless. Just a pall cast upon the earth by these psychopaths. And what are we going to do about it, folks? They represent such a tiny few. They represent such a tiny few, a small sliver, a tiny percentage of all of humanity. Why do we let them get away with it? Why have we let these sick psychopaths literally steal our world from us? Why are we not just pulling them out of power? It doesn't take a military. It doesn't take a military to pull them from power. They represent such a tiny few. They represent such a tiny few. It's not like we need to win a war. We just need to pull them from power. We represent at least 98% of humanity worldwide. These Zionist psychopaths have taken over control of virtually all of our countries, all of the important institutions within each of those countries, the financial system, the anti-education system, the legal system, so-called, but which never gives justice, the political system. It's all controlled by the same sick, psychopathic, satanic, pedophile-ridden Zionists who we just need to pull from power. We are the vast, vast, vast majority. Think about it, folks, 98% of us. Why are we letting the 2% literally steal our sun, our natural weather, our clean air? We're letting them depress deliberately our economies. We're letting them create fiat currency out of thin air and then to loan that fiat currency, fraudulent fiat currency, back to nation states as a way to indebt us. Here's a black plane flying very fast at high altitude, heavily spraying. We started seeing these black airplanes about a week ago. He's flying incredibly fast, and you can see the effect of another chemtrail that's just been flown over. But what are we doing, folks? We all need to help to awaken everyone in our lives. Other family members. They need to awaken in turn other family members, other neighbors, other work colleagues, other friends. We have to awaken one another. We have to spread the word. And that is so incredibly powerful because they know that they are a tiny, tiny minority. They know that they have to operate behind the scenes. They learned that lesson a long time ago. Always operate behind the scenes. Because if they exercise overt power, when people become unsettled by their uses and abuses of that power, they will take them down. So they've learned to hide in the shadows and to put puppet politicians and puppet ostensible leaders into places of supposed power, but where they actually reign from behind the scenes. They are the little wizards of Oz that control our world, the little cowards that hide in the shadows, ever lurking in the shadows to do their misdeeds, to carry out their organized crime against all of humanity. They know that all it takes is for us to shine the light of truth upon their non-stop criminality, and for the whole of the world's people to stand up against them and to just remove them from power. Literally just remove them from power and chuck them all into prison forever. Psychopaths are never going to be brought round to being non-psychopaths. Look at all these scores and hundreds of millions of people who have been mass murdered since the beginning of the 20th century, with the Bolshevik Revolution, the First World War, the interwar period. We're tens of millions of Russians, amongst other people, were being deliberately starved to death or otherwise mass murdered by the Bolsheviks in Russia. And lots of other crimes happening around the world during that time. Only to then bring us to the Second World War, and between 60 and 70 million more people were mass murdered. And we didn't win the war, folks. Germany very much lost the war, but we, the Western peoples, did not win the war. Those who have been lurking in the shadows of power are still very much in power. The same people who knew that they were going to wage world war after world war as a means to slowly decapitate humanity and slowly rein us into their permanent new world order within which it would be impossible to resist, because they would control every lever of power, every information outlet. Doesn't that sound very much like where we are today? Where the Zionists control the message through their mass media, their broadcast mass media and print media, where no one who pays attention merely to that mainstream media has a clue of what's taking place in the world. If they haven't done their own reading and have only been so-called educated in schools and universities, they don't have a clue as to what actually happened over the course of even modern 20th century, 21st century history, 19th century history. They've just been fed a diet of styrofoam, basically. And so they control everything. They control our headspace because they control the media. They control our headspace because they control the anti-education system. They control our economies because they control the financial system. They decide when and where to create money out of thin air through nothing but computer transactions, completely fraudulent, indebting nations in such a way that the nations can never, ever be debt-free. And we have this lifeless, lightless world with this terrible pall of toxic heavy metals cast over the entire planet. And so we never have any sunshine. We never have any naturally occurring weather. The air is poisonous. And remember, folks, these sickos that have very happily killed tens and scores of millions of people, oftentimes through the most deranged means possible. Again, I refer you to the Bolshevik Revolution, where they stole the grain from the people, deliberately to starve them to death as a means to control them and to usher in their sick Soviet-style government. The same people today, well, let me just go, let me show you this. That's a huge plane. Look at the chemtrails pouring out of that plane. You saw the high altitude black plane that I just showed you a few minutes ago. This is huge, and the chemtrail is massive compared to that. But remember, these same sickos who have deliberately killed tens and scores of millions of people over the course of history will not hesitate to deliberately starve us. We in the West have enjoyed a pretty much a free ride compared to much of the world in the past 100 years. Do not think for a second that they will not deliberately starve us to death. And so I often think about this when I see planes like this flying overhead. We know that the military has studied dispersal systems to deliver chemical weapons and biological weapons. We know that they have looked at and studied to a great detail dispersing those chemical and biological agents via airplanes and other means. What is to stop these psychopaths on any given day loading up these airplanes in exactly the same fashion that they're loading up the aerosol tanks today? What is to stop them at any point in time loading those same aerosol tanks using the same employees, the exact same methodology, and yet in those, at that time, putting in some virus, some biological agent, some chemical agent that is intended to wipe out a population or to deeply sicken a population or to wipe out the food supply of any given region or country. And remember, there's another plane flying across. Remember, they use the defoliant in Vietnam, Agent Orange, expressly for the very thing that I'm talking about. So don't think the psychopaths at the helm, like Henry Kissinger, basically the CEO of the New World Order. He's also the one who's responsible for the Agent Orange and the defoliant being sprayed over Vietnam during the Vietnam War. Don't think these sick psychopaths, these Zionist psychopaths, will not do the exact same thing to us at the moment they decide it behooves them to do so. And so what are we waiting for? We're slowly committing suicide, folks. We're slowly committing suicide by letting these psychopaths run this world, where they steal our skies, where they spray us 24/7, 365 days a year, and we just sit idly by, waiting for them to do something like I've just suggested is almost inevitable. And remember as well that the companies that are tied in with the geoengineering, like Monsanto, who somehow knew to engineer a genetically modified crop that was resistant to aluminum. Why would Monsanto develop a seed that was resistant to aluminum unless they were very much a part of the geoengineering program whereby aluminum nanoparticulates would be sprayed 24/7, 365 days a year all around the world? Remember, Monsanto has been knocking itself out to take control of the food supply. Remember that Henry Kissinger, when asked about the future of warfare, talked about food and the access to food being the greatest weapon. Remember that the U.S. military developed the document about owning the weather by 2025 and waging weather warfare. Remember all those things, folks, because those people who you think you're electing, those people who you think are your leaders, your prime ministers and your presidents and your representatives in Congress or Parliament, or the bureaucrats who are pushing pens in various organizations that control us. Don't think for a second that they have your best interest at heart. They have the exact opposite. They are all paid prostitutes. They're all whores. They're psychopaths. They are clamping down everything that is good in this world. Can you not see that for yourself here today? Can you not look up in the sky where you're living and see that for yourself? Can you not see that in the phony debates that are televised all across the world? Can you not see that in the phony non-journalism that you're reading in the newspapers every day? The acting talking heads reading from their teleprompters on the television 24/7, 365 days a year. Can you not see that they have nothing like your best interests at heart? Can you not see that they are just lining us up for slaughter like livestock? Think about it, folks. All that stands between us and freedom, in getting our skies and sunshine and naturally occurring weather and healthy foods back, is us waking other people up, sharing this message, and then pulling these, I'll call them MFs, but I'm sure you understand what that stands for, pulling these MFs from power. Yeah? And I'll leave it there for today. Until next time.